The reception hall doors blew inward on their hinges, splinters raining across the dance floor, and 12 armed men in dark tactical gear poured into the middle of my brother's wedding before anyone had finished screaming. I was standing at the head table, champagne glass still halfway to my mouth, watching the woman my brother Dean had just married go from radiant to razor still in the space of one breath. Her name was Lorraine Vance, and up until that moment I'd known her mostly as the quiet, polite fiancée who baked cookies for our mother and blushed whenever anyone asked about her old job doing logistics work overseas. Dean had told me once, half joking, that he'd have to do all the protecting in that marriage, because Lorraine couldn't so much as kill a spider without apologizing to it first. I'd laughed along with him. Standing there watching gunmen fan out along the walls, I understood how wrong that joke had been, and how much I'd misread the woman my brother chose. The band had just cut out mid-song, the efficient frozen with his hand still raised from pronouncing them husband and wife only minutes before, and somewhere near the bar, a champagne tower toppled and shattered, glass skittering across the parquet floor. Nobody moved for a full 2 seconds. Then everyone moved at once, chairs scraping, someone's mother screaming, a flower girl crying somewhere near the gift table while her father tried to fold himself over her. "Everyone down, hands where we can see them," the lead gunman shouted, sweeping a rifle across the room of maybe 80 guests, most of them now frozen or dropping to the floor between overturned chairs. This doesn't need to get ugly if nobody plays hero. Dean grabbed for Lorraine's arm, pulling her down instinctively, the way any groom would try to shield his bride. She didn't resist him exactly, but she also didn't drop the way the rest of us did. She crouched low behind the head table, eyes already moving, cataloging exits, counting hostiles, and I watched her slip off her heels without a sound. "Lorraine, stay down," Dean whispered, panic cracking his voice. "I need you to stay exactly here and keep your head below the table line," she said back, calm as if she were reminding him to pick up the dry cleaning. "Do not move until I tell you." He blinked at her. "What are you?" She was already gone, moving low along the back wall toward the catering entrance. Her wedding dress hiked and knotted at one hip to free her legs. Using the confusion and the screaming as cover the same way, I realized later. She'd been trained to use chaos on purpose rather than fight through it. The gunmen weren't randoms. I heard enough of their chatter to understand they were there for someone specific, a guest 2 tables over, a shipping executive named Corwin Reyes who apparently owed the wrong people a great deal of money and had made the mistake of hiding at his own goddaughter's wedding to avoid being found. They hadn't planned on a hall full of witnesses, and they hadn't planned on Lorraine. I lost sight of her for almost a full minute after that, crouched with my face pressed against the tablecloth, listening to boots moving across the floor. My hands were shaking too badly to have held a phone steady even if I dared to reach for one. Beside me, Dean kept whispering her name like it might summon her back safely. The first man went down without a sound near the kitchen doors, folded by something that happened too fast and too clean for me to track from across the room. The second one turned toward the movement and never got the chance to shout a warning before she'd closed the gap and put him down too, disarming him mid-motion, the rifle in her hands before his knees hit the floor. "Contact, she's got Drasnik's rifle," someone barked over their radios, real fear entering a voice that had sounded bored a minute earlier. From there it was methodical in a way that made my stomach turn over, not from horror but from disbelief. She didn't run at them. She used the tables, the dead space behind the DJ booth, the shadows along the buffet line, moving guests out of the line of fire with quiet hand signals that somehow made frightened people obey instantly. 3 more men went down in the next 90 seconds, each one taken in a different way. A controlled shot, a takedown at close range, a disarm that ended with the gunman on the floor gasping rather than bleeding. The lead gunman finally understood what was unraveling around him and turned to find her, roaring for his remaining men to converge on the head table. Lorraine was already there ahead of them, positioned between the shooters and the corner where Dean and I and a dozen other guests were pressed flat against the wall. "Lorraine Vance doesn't work logistics," I heard the lead gunman say, backing up now, his voice gone thin. "That's not a real name, that's—" "It's the only name you need," she said, and put him down before he finished the sentence, disciplined and final, no wasted motion, no cruelty in it either. Just the end of the threat. The last three men dropped their weapons entirely rather than face whatever they'd just watched happen to 8 of their friends in under 4 minutes. One of them tried to bolt for the shattered front doors, and she caught him before he'd made it 10 feet, a single controlled motion that put him face down on the parquet without a shot fired. She had all of them zip-tied with cord pulled from the DJ's equipment case before the first police sirens even reached the parking lot, working fast and without a wasted movement, checking each restraint twice the way I imagined she'd been trained to. The hall stayed dead silent as she walked back through it, barefoot, her dress torn at the hem, hair falling loose from its pins, expression as composed as it had been reciting vows 20 minutes earlier. She knelt by Dean, checked him over with both hands like a woman confirming a fact rather than comforting a husband, and only then did something like relief cross her face. "You're all right," she said. Dean stared at her like he was seeing an entirely different person standing in his wife's dress. "Who are you?" "I'm your wife," she said simply. "I was also an Army officer for 9 years before we met. Special operations. It never came up because it never needed to." Nobody in that hall laughed at her anymore, and nobody offered to protect her the rest of the night. When the police finished taking statements and the caterers quietly swept broken glass off the dance floor, old Uncle Garrison, who'd spent the whole reception loudly predicting Dean would have to wear the pants in that marriage, walked up to Lorraine and simply shook her hand, no joke left in him at all. "9 years," he said, shaking his head slowly, still holding onto her hand. "And you let all of us run our mouths about you at the rehearsal dinner without saying a word." "It wasn't the time," she said, and that was the whole of her explanation, offered without a trace of satisfaction at having proven anyone wrong. The officiant, still pale, asked if she wanted to finish the reception program or postpone it. She looked at Dean, who was watching her now the way a man looks at something he's only beginning to understand the size of, and she asked for 5 minutes to change out of the torn dress and put her hair back in order before anything else happened. Dean didn't let go of her hand again for the rest of the evening, and later, when the band finally started playing again, more subdued than before, I watched my brother lead his bride onto the floor for their first dance, both of them a little unsteady, both of them entirely changed by what the room had just watched her become. I never brought up the spider joke again, and neither, as far as I know, did he.